When are we okay now?
Okay to go.
Okay, thanks everybody. Good afternoon, good to see you all. Can I welcome you to this afternoon's Cabinet, and anybody who's watching in on the live stream, welcome to you as well. We have a really important agenda today. So let's go to the first item, and that's the apologies for absence. And I believe we only have one apology, and that's from Councillor Joanne Watkins, the leader of the Liberal group. I should have done introductions first. Sorry, I'm Peter Fox, leader of the council. Can I invite my cabinet colleagues to introduce themselves? Perhaps I could start with Phil.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Phil Murphy, Cabinet Member for Resources.
Richard.
Councillor Richard John, Cabinet Member for Children, Young People and Mon Life.
Penny.
Sorry, I'm having difficulty. Hello, I'm Penny Jones and I'm Cabinet Member for Social Services, Safeguarding and Health.
Sarah.
Hi, I'm Councillor Sarah Jones, Cabinet Member for Social Justice and Community Development.
Jane.
Councillor Jane Pratt, Cabinet Member for Infrastructure and Neighbourhood Services.
Paul.
Paul Jordan, Cabinet Member for Governance and Law.
And finally, Bob.
Bob Greenland, Enterprise and Land Use Planning.
Thank you all. We're also joined by Dimitri Petruni, leader of the opposition Labour group, and I'm not sure if we have Frances Taylor, but she may be joining us shortly. She is the leader of the independent group. So can I welcome you all, and let's go into the agenda. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any at this point?
I have an interest, Leader, in the Welsh Church Act Fund. I'm a committee member of one of the applicants.
Okay. So
Likewise, there is one of the applicants is a church that I serve.
Okay, thank you both. You'll be sent an electronic proforma to sign and send back to Democratic Services as well. Anybody else finds an interest as they go through the agenda, can you please declare it verbally when you find it? Okay. It was remiss of me also, we're joined by many officers. Thank you all for coming, and can you introduce yourselves if you're called on to speak, please? Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take us on to item 3 and the first report, and I'll take us through this. And this is the coronavirus COVID-19 risk management update. And this is to provide us with an update of the arrangements the council is continuing to have to identify, manage and mitigate the risks in response to the pandemic. As all members know, the pandemic has posed an unprecedented challenge to our way of life and the way of in which we provide services. Indeed, it's challenged all parts of society. We have had to pause or repurpose a lot of our usual work as Cabinet was directed towards the emergency response effort, and a fantastic effort it's been, and a big thanks to everybody who's been part of that. Earlier this month, Cabinet evaluated progress against the purpose and strategic aims that had been put in place, and as a consequence, Cabinet then revised those the purpose and strategic aims to reflect the Council's transition from response more toward recovery. And this is also, all of this has come at a financial cost, with huge additional costs incurred in responding to the emergency response effort and significant losses of income as services cease to operate. And no doubt we'll hear a bit more about that in future reports in the agenda. Our finances have been stretched to breaking point. Despite the many challenges, these efforts have resulted in new ways of doing things which we need to embrace, and some of that will form part of a lasting legacy of transformation as we move forward and finding ways to do things in a different way. Our role in the coming months will be to create the conditions for residents and businesses to take forward those first steps of recovery, and we've done a lot of work in that regard so far, and we wish our businesses well in trying to get back on their feet following such a difficult and challenging period, and it won't be easy for many of them or many of their employees, I know. When Cabinet reconvened in early May, it received an update on the risk management arrangements the Council had in place to identify, manage and mitigate risks in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The risk management arrangements have also been maintained and adapted as we transition from the response to the recovery phase. The Council has also adapted the internal response structure that link into the wider formal Gwent structures, and a diagram of that structure and arrangements in place can be found at Annex 1 of the report. There are updated internal arrangements in the immediate response phase. This was coordinated initially via what we call the ERT, the Emergency Response Team, and that group was formally stood down on the 29th of May, and the Council's Strategic Leadership Team took on the ongoing responsibility to oversee the ongoing response. And SLT, Senior Leadership Team, I know, continue to meet twice a week in that regard. COVID-19, there is a COVID-19 coordinating group, and that has also been established, which is chaired by our Chief Officer for Resources. And the role of the group is to maintain oversight of the ongoing emergency response, and where it it's highlighted where what it's doing in those bullet points in 311. You'll see there receiving those updates from the SCG and those other areas there. The ERT was guided by an established risk register. And subsequent to the ERT being stood down, the COVID-19 related risks are being assessed by the COVID-19 coordinating group. The residual risks have now either transferred to the Council's main strategic risk register, or where the risks are operational in nature, they've been transferred into the service business plans. COVID related risks are assessed on a weekly basis, and as required by the COVID-19 coordinating group and reported into, considered and acted on by the SLT. Appendix 1 provides an overview of the updates made to the strategic risk register. The high and medium risk previously identified by the ERT in the 6th of May Cabinet report are now considered low risk, with the exception of the financial issues of sustainability. COVID-19 specific subgroups that have been established to support ERT have similarly been stood down and resultant activity embedded back into directorates. The RT and any other subgroups can quickly be reconvened if the situation arises, and we've seen examples of where that might be happening across the UK. Bolton comes to mind, and other places. So we have to be prepared to stand things back up, because this pandemic hasn't gone away yet. We're just trying to control it, and hopefully we can keep the lid on it, as it seems to be happening in Wales at the moment. External arrangements, well, Monmouthshire's links with external responding organisations via the Gwent Strategic Coordinating Group continue. That group, the SCG, is chaired by Gwent Police and covers their footprint, the Gwent footprint, and representatives from the emergency services, local authorities, health organisations, the military, NRW, and various utilities and Welsh Government all sit on that group, and our representative is the head of People Services. And that group then are responsible for setting the strategic objectives and coordination of the partner agency response to COVID-19. The Council now provides a weekly situation report to the SCG, and these are collated and sent weekly then to the Emergency Coordination Centre, who then report directly to Wales Government, who in turn then report up to COBRA. So in addition to the above, I meet with other council leaders and ministers on a weekly basis. We were meeting virtually daily for many weeks, and I know my cabinet colleagues have been flat out all through this as well, liaising with their counterparts across Wales. Work never seemed to stop all the way through this pandemic for them as well as myself. SCG are now only needing to meet on a weekly basis, and the focus for them now is to both plan ahead and to ensure that robust arrangements are in place to respond to any further outbreak or second wave, and they assess those by those criteria laid down in 3.21 of the report. So the risk now concerns any resultant resurgence of the COVID-19 cases, whether it be through a local outbreak or a second wave as we move toward autumn and the flu season, where that capacity of the NHS could be really challenged. And in order to respond to these risks, the following measures in 3.23 continue to be essential to maintain the reduced level of transmission and avoid resurgence of COVID-19 cases and deaths. And we've got to pay a big thanks to our wider community for the way they have embraced the the expectations of them to social distance and to act in accordance to the law, and that has helped us maintain those lower cases that we're experiencing now in Monmouthshire and across Wales. So colleagues, there's a lot in that report, but I hope it gives reassurance to you and to those who are looking in that the authority has responded appropriately, quickly, is moving as it should do, and is liaising with all of the key partners, is very aware of the risks that it has before it. We are monitoring those, we are keeping on top of things, and we're ready to act whenever we need to if it becomes necessary. So colleagues, the recommendation in the report is basically to note what I've taken you through, and it's that Cabinet endorse the arrangements the Council continues to have in place and the risks that are being actively managed in response of the pandemic. Okay, so I'm going to open it up to any questions, or perhaps before I do that, I invite your author of the report, Peter Davis, in to see if there's anything he'd like to add to the report.
Thank you very much, Leader. Yes, you've covered the report very well, very comprehensive in your update. I think it's just only a couple of points really. Firstly, just to highlight that a report was received by Public Services Select Committee on Monday, and that report was substantively based on the report that you are now considering today. From the feedback I've received, very good challenge during that committee meeting. The report was very well received, and as a result of the good scrutiny that took place, an acceptance that one of the risks that is attached in Appendix 1 that positions itself within the Strategic Risk Register, that the post-mitigation risk level is actually adjusted from low to medium, and that's in respect of, I guess, us services remaining as sustainable into the future. And I guess that very much ties into your point around the gravity of our current financial circumstances resulting from COVID, and the very fact that at this juncture we cannot with confidence confirm that we are able to sustain services across the board. So I guess we'll come on to it in time later in the agenda in terms of the month 2 report, but clearly the work that we will now progress over the coming months by way of the budget recovery plan, that will obviously draw conclusion, and we will be able to better reassess that risk. And then the only other point really is just one around the nature of being in and amidst this COVID pandemic. The emergency response team was stood down at a point, as you highlighted. That was as a consequence of our assessment of where we were in transitioning from response to recovery, and clearly, as will be the case if matters escalate in terms of a major outbreak or in fact a second wave, then clearly those structures are in place to be stood up or down as required. So it is just to give you that comfort. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Peter, and thanks for your work in coordinating all of this effort as well. Colleagues, anybody wish to come in from Cabinet? If you could raise your hand in the taskbar, that would be a chat bar, that would be useful. No, nothing there. So I'm going to move us. I won't read that recommendation out again. Well, I will. It's easy. That Cabinet endorse the arrangements the Council continues to have in place and the risks that are being actively managed in response to the coronavirus. You'll see the voting opportunity in the chat bar. If you could go ahead and submit your vote, please. We should get to 8, so please try again if it's there. You go. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you, Peter, for that. Okay, can I take us on then to the second item on the agenda? Well, it's not the second item, it's item 4, and that's the outdoor education service. Richard John.
Thank you very much. I'm really proud that this administration has been fully committed and remains fully committed to delivering outdoor education. Our outdoor education service is a really important rite of passage for children and young people in our county. It teaches leadership skills, self-confidence, teamwork, many practical and vocational skills, and physical education through adventure sports. It's especially important for pupils from less well-off backgrounds, and that's why we ensure that children eligible for free school meals benefit from a subsidy to ensure they can access outdoor education. It's also a really important means of helping engage pupils who perhaps exhibit challenging behaviour or are at risk of being excluded from school. Recently, we took the decision to dissolve the Gwent Outdoor Education Service following the withdrawal of our partners, the other local authorities in Gwent. 4 local authorities collectively operated 3 outdoor education sites. We are now in a position where 1 local authority is running 2 sites. Now, since the lockdown began in March, both sites have been closed and staff have been furloughed, and we will look to redeploy staff within the county as the furlough scheme comes to an end. Our outdoor education centres have no bookings until next year, and we appreciate we're in volatile times, and it's unclear when schools will be in a position to recommence outdoor education residential visits. In the short to medium term, it's very clear that there will not be any business for the outdoor education sites for the remainder of 2020. After almost 6 months off school, outdoor education will not be the top priority for our schools. So today I propose that both sites remain closed for the remainder of 2020. After that, it's unpredictable, but I hope that we will see an uplift in outdoor education visits. This will be gradual, so I propose that initially we just open 1 site in January 2021, and the site with the greatest capacity is Gilwen. In light of successive budget deficits in recent years, including a deficit of £116,000 in 2019-20, as one authority continues to bear the cost of running 2 sites, which was previously run by 4 authorities, I've asked officers to consider the options in a further report about the long-term future of the service. As I say, both sites operated at a loss last year, and this is not sustainable. But I must repeat, we are fully committed to outdoor education. but this commitment means taking decisions to protect the service. These considerations will include how we can maximise the benefits of the facilities and take a more commercially minded approach. Current losses, while both sites are closed, are enormous, currently expected to be £350,000 in this financial year. Continuing to carry this deficit while both sites are closed will be massively challenging. But I very much hope that we will be able to restart our outdoor education service at the earliest opportunity, because we recognise the really important role that it plays in the life chances of young people, and how it remains a key plank of our #1 priority, which is to offer children and young people the very best possible start in life.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, I think I certainly have always been proud of our outdoor education service, and my own children went through it, as many of people watching here, their children would have gone through it. It adds such fantastic value to our young people's education and growing up. And I think we will always remain committed to outdoor education. It's really important. But absolutely take on board all of the things that you've shared, Richard, and let's just hope in the start of the new year that we're not still in this horrible situation, and that we see confidence coming back into our schools, and children from our own schools and other authorities starting to want to use that outdoor education centre, recognising what a wonderful thing it is. So I support your way forward. Colleagues, please put your hand up in the box in the chat if you wish to say something. Okay, yes, Councillor Jane Pratt.
Thank you very much, Leader, and I just want to endorse what's been said and say that, I too really value the opportunities that these outdoor education centres provide to all children, irrespective of their background. And, I really support this report, because a lot of our neighbouring authorities have closed their outdoor education facilities, but this moving forward will give us a way to make sure that we've got a fully sustainable model moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Penny Jones.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just doing the same. As a user, when I was a lecturer in Cross Keys, I spent many weekends there with students, and it was so beneficial. It's so much more than outdoor education. It does so much to help forge relationships and friendships that last forever, and help people's confidence to grow, young people's confidence to grow. So although I've suffered there in the snow and the wind and caving, which I absolutely hated, I really am quite sad that we're getting rid of Hillston Park, but I totally understand the reasons for its closure at this time, and for Gilwern to go ahead. So I support everything that Councillor John has said. Sorry, it's me again. It's a mistake.
Okay, thank you. I mean, obviously we're not talking of closures as such at the moment, only to retain the current situation of our centres being closed until the new year, where we hopefully will have some people starting to use it again. But we look forward to that more in-depth report from you, Richard, in due course. I see is Ian on the line, Ian Saunders. Is there anything you'd like to add, Ian? I think it's Ian, yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon all. Ian Saunders, Chief Operating Officer for MonLife. I think it's been a really good discussion, and really value the comments made by members. Clearly the service is in a catastrophic place at the moment. We are really positive though for the future. Whether, the discussions have got to be long and detailed, whether we need facilities, whether we can deliver programmes in a different way. But I can tell you the team are so committed to giving a better outcome and delivering what is a great service to those young people and other markets. Indeed, we're looking at disability provision, the more commercial approach with training. So we know we can do more, and that's the challenge that we've been set both by COVID and obviously members.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Okay, colleagues, or Richard, like to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer a bit of clarification. I know there's been a lot of speculation in the local press in recent days, and speculation on Facebook that today's discussion are about getting rid or closing of a site. That's absolutely not the case. I have seen a lot of speculation about that on Facebook, that's about that's what today's report is about. I can confirm that's absolutely not the case. Both sites have to remain closed because there is no business for them at the moment. We're hopeful that our outdoor education service can resume and get back to the levels of business we had pre-coronavirus as soon as possible, as soon as that is safe and as soon as our schools are able to take up that offer. You know, we remain committed to outdoor education. And you know, I hope that business can return to as close to normal, and hopefully in future even better than normal. You know, there are plenty of untapped opportunities that our outdoor education service can tap into in future, and that's why it's really important that we take some time now to consider what the long-term future of outdoor education is.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Okay, I'm going to move us to the recommendations, and I'll just read through those so that it's very clear. So in recommendation 2.1, that members note the overspending position for 2019-20 of £116,000 and early indications of an overspend in 2021 in the region of £350,000. This deficit should be reduced further through the potential recovery of income loss shortfalls from Welsh Government. 2.2, given the likely reduced numbers of customers due to COVID-19, the service should remain closed for residential visits until the end of December 2020. Continuing with a two-site strategy is not viable in the short or medium term, and therefore the service will adopt a one-site approach at Gilwern. A further report will be presented to Cabinet in autumn 2020, which will consider the longer-term future of the service. So you can vote now in the chat line, colleagues, so if you would. And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. And thank you, Richard. Thank you, Ian. Okay, shall I move us on to the next item, and that is the Revenue and Capital Monitoring 2020-21 Forecast Outturn Statement Month 2. Phil Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And as you say, this is the outturn statement at month 2. Really, what we're doing here is providing members with an early year forecast, if you like, of the revenue and capital outturn position for the current financial year. This forecast is heavily caveated, given the lack of clarity from Welsh Government on compensating payments to recognise the financial impact of COVID-19 on the council, and to provide an update on the financial impact of COVID-19 on the council, and to outline a timetable for a budget recovery plan to be developed. This report recognises the extremely tight financial position that the council finds itself in following the floods, where we hardly got any compensation from Welsh Government at all, and the pandemic, where we have been obliged to spend money and incur losses that is clear will not get fully compensated for, and we'll have to wait a long time for any funding in any event. So we're facing a net revenue forecast deficit of some 10.37 million. 6.83 million of this is directly associated with the extraordinary financial pressures attached to COVID-19. Strong representations are being made, and will continue to be made to Welsh Government by any channel available to us for full reimbursement of that 6.83 million. But even then, it leaves the council with a sum of 3.54 million to address as a true in-year pressure. An in-year budget recovery plan to address the forecast overspend of 3.54 million will be drawn up for Cabinet to consider in September. It's also a recommendation that Cabinet agrees that the 2019-20 year-end one-off surplus of 1.8 million be set against this year's forecast pressure of 3.54 million, as I said, leaving a residual sum of 1.74 million as a minimum to address by way of an in-year recovery plan. In taking that approach, Cabinet recognises the extraordinary nature of the current year and accepts that a further sum of 1.8 million will need to be found as part of the budget setting process for the financial year 21-22. It's also recommended that Cabinet recognises that these numbers will have to be reconsidered in any event, or particularly in the event that Welsh Government falls short of expectation in compensating the council or pressures such as the pay award settlements are agreed at levels beyond our planning assumptions, and I'll come back to those a little bit later on. This forecast comprises COVID-19 income losses of 5.71 million, an additional cost of 1.12 million, and non-COVID pressures of 3.54 million. Non-COVID pressures have in part resulted from the implementation of budget savings proposals for 2021 being delayed, and around 300,000 pressure arising from the floods, where we only got a small amount of recompense from Welsh Government following our claim. It's important to note that this presents a worst case scenario and that it does not take into account any of Welsh Government funding anticipated to meet the additional costs of the COVID-19 emergency, the response or reimbursement of income losses that have equally resulted. The Council is calling for Welsh Government to reimburse all such COVID-related costs and income losses, and also to get that reimbursement out as quickly as possible. The immediate focus of the Council was to wait for clarification on the level of compensating funding from Welsh Government is to manage the non-COVID pressures of 3.54 million. The Council tactically generated headroom of 1.8 million in its Council fund balance as part of the outturn strategy for 2019-20. If Welsh Government do in fact fully reimburse all COVID-related costs and income losses, the Council will have to find 1.74 million in the current year through a combination of additional savings and any further utilisation of reserves deemed necessary. However, this would still leave the Council with a very challenging outlook for 2021-22 and over the medium term. Paragraph 3.7 shows the overall position. However, there is a greater detail in Table 2 that follows that. And if you look at Table 2, you'll notice where the pressures currently are. Children's Services is anticipating an overspend of 1.575 million. The Neighbourhood Services, Facilities and Fleet, 2.8 million. Planning and Housing, just over 1 million. Leisure, Youth and Outdoor Adventure, Mon Life included in there, 2.173 million. And there's also a pressure of, as far as we can see, somewhere around 1.3 million in respect of the pay award. Teachers' pay award has just been announced now at 3.1%, and there is an anticipated 2.75% in respect of other staff. So there's that 10.37 million is a very real figure if we don't get the degree of funding that we believe is appropriate from Welsh Government. So as the council transitions from the response phase of the pandemic, it's important that Cabinet's kept informed as impacts are being assessed. So putting the council's finances into contact pre-COVID-19 pandemic, the council had brought forward budget savings proposals for the current year of 8.5 million in an attempt to manage budget pressures of 9.5 million, along with the disappointed settlement where the extent of pressures on services were not recognised. We benefited from a significant one-off VAT receipt and the flexible use of capital receipts, and that enabled us to create effectively a surplus in the 2019-20, and that is the surplus which has been utilised to help with the current situation. We finalised the draft accounts for 1920 with usable capital receipts, as I said, and the council fund balance of £8.5 million and usable earmarked reserves of 6.4 million, of which there is planned use that will reduce the earmarked reserves to 5.4 million at the end of the year. So as you can see, the council was already facing financial challenges pre-COVID, and the pandemic has accentuated the challenge. Services and existing capacity has been redirected and redeployed. Many income generating services have had to stop. The income loss and shortfall is significant and ongoing, and there's a delay in the implementation of some of the budget savings proposals for 2021 as a result of people being directed elsewhere to respond to the pandemic. So Leader, this is, as I said at the outset, is a very challenging situation. One is shared with several other councils in Wales. Many like us having very small reserves, and as a result are less able to stand these pressures than some who are much better funded and accordingly have far greater levels of reserves. I urge all members to study this report very carefully and take a full part in the upcoming scrutiny of the next stage in tackling this situation. As for the non-COVID pressures, paragraph 3.12 shows a breakdown of that, and it can be seen that the pressures that I have already referred to are very real. So I'll leave it for people to read and digest this, Leader. There's an awful lot of very detailed stuff in here, which is far too much to go into now. But I would just leave with that 3.12 that clearly shows how the 3.5 million that we've already got as pressures up to month 2 is very much manifesting itself. So I'll hand over to you at that point.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Phil, taking us through so comprehensively. This is a bleak picture for us. I've said this before. You know, I've been around this council a long time, and I don't think I've ever, well, we haven't ever been in a position which is so challenging as it is now. And we're not alone in that. There are many authorities in that same position. The pandemic has really hit us in many ways, as you outlined. I can't overemphasize the point you made about all members of our council really understanding this and understanding the gravity and the severity of this position. This isn't just one of those times where we can try and find a way forward. It's always hard to do that, I have to say, finding a way forward. But there is very difficult to see ways forward without us having to look very seriously at some of our service provision. I don't know what that could look like, but I'm extremely anxious going forward. I'll be even more anxious if Wales Government don't manage to fund our lost income and cost incurred to date, and we don't know what lies ahead with future surges or breakouts with the virus and the implications for our longer term income loss as well. It is a frightening situation, but it also highlights again, I think, messages we've been playing out for a long time about the vulnerability of authorities, some authorities in Wales, and the need for Wales to at least commission an independent study of the way local authority is funded across Wales. I don't believe Wales government would want to see several authorities in Wales fall over the edge because they haven't addressed how local authorities should be funded for a sustainable future. I will continue to make the case wherever I can for a fairer settlement for local authorities like ours that seem to be disadvantaged massively by the current ways of distribution of our resources across Wales. Okay, colleagues, I'm going to invite you to come forward. If you want to say anything, please put your hand up in the chat bar.
Perhaps Peter would like to add something.
Oh, sorry, yes, that'd be remiss of me. Before I bring Richard in, can I bring Pete Davis back in, please?
Thank you, Leader, and in all honesty, I don't think I need to offer too much further comment. I think in terms of what Councillor Murphy has taken you through in terms of the report, and furthermore, I think, Leader, the comments that you've just offered yourself, I think if I made further comment, I think I'd be simply duplicating what you highlighted yourself, and clearly, and as you stated, the gravity of the situation. I think the only one point I would make, just for a level of awareness, is officers of the council, senior officers of the council, are obviously behind the scenes looking at and working up options to be brought in front of Cabinet for discussion over the coming weeks. And furthermore, there will be a need to, I guess, get ahead in our planning and preparation for next year, 2021-22. So I guess it's both putting shape to the budget recovery plan that you talked to, as well as looking at the shape of budget proposals for next year. Because, as you rightly say, we absolutely need to carve a sustainable future for the council, as difficult as that may be.
Yeah, thank you, Peter, and thanks for the work you and all of our officers doing behind the scenes. This is challenging every year, but this year is going to be of a different scale again, I think. Okay, can I bring Richard in first, and then Jane?
Thank you. I just wanted to echo what Councillor Murphy and Councillor Fox were saying, and of course, year on year, the situation is getting more and more challenging because the gap between us, the worst funded council in the country, and the best funded councils in the country is getting wider and wider. So it just exacerbates those challenges and makes the case even stronger for reform of that funding formula, which just doesn't recognise the additional cost of rurality and just doesn't include any sort of fairness to ensure that children, for example, have roughly the same amount spent on their education. And of course, the financial challenges are made worse in many ways by announcements such as that from Welsh Government today, that we now have a teachers' pay award to fund, and we accept that teachers have done we recognise teachers have done a fantastic job over the summer. They stepped up our hub provision for children of key workers so quickly, and that was fantastic provision for young people at a really difficult time when we really needed our key workers there on the front line. So teachers absolutely deserve a pay rise, but of course Welsh Government have made that announcement today and not said a word about how it's going to be paid for. It's all very well taking some credit for a nice announcement, but we also need to know where the money's coming from for things like this, or you're just going to make council finances even worse and force us to make some really unpalatable decisions between putting up council tax to very, very difficult levels for our residents, or cutting back on services unless Welsh Government are going to fund announcements like this.
Yeah, it's a sound point, that is, Richard. Okay, Jane, and then Penny.
Thank you very much, Leader, and I just wanted to thank Councillor Murphy and Pete Davis and all the officers for providing us with such clarity, as depressing as it is to read. You know, it's very transparent, and it shows us all clearly where the pressures are coming from. My own portfolio has been very badly hit. I've only got to mention a few things. We've lost from car parking 700,000, 282,000 from parking enforcement, 35,000 from season tickets. In addition, the worldwide recycling markets have collapsed, and they probably won't recover until next year. So if you add all these together, we have got huge challenges ahead. And if we're going to continue to try and provide all the services to the same level as before, we face really unprecedented and difficult decisions. And, you know, I absolutely echo what's been said by the leader and by Councillor Murphy. You know, Welsh Government, we urge them to provide us with the financial support to cover these pressures that have been caused by COVID. Thank you.
Penny?
Yes, thank you. I just want to speak on behalf of social services, really, in recognition of Councillor Murphy's report, and recognising the overspend in children's services of 1.75 million. This is mainly due to, as you pointed out, the large number of looked after children, 217 at the last count. However, the concern is that we by no means know how many more vulnerable children, young people and families may be affected as a result of the pandemic. Issues may not come to the fore until autumn, when children go back to school, for instance. So we won't be able to identify problems till then. The effect on finances, therefore, may be considerably worse. And there is, you know, no easy answer to this. On the plus side, although supporting communities obviously comes at a cost, there's been a lot of innovation and amongst the service delivery, and it's been adopted in some areas, and perhaps this could act as a base for future efficiencies. So there is something to work on there. However, you know, overall, it's a very difficult problem, and it's not easily solvable, but you cannot highlight enough the seriousness of the problem with children's services. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Penny. No more hands up in the chat bar, so I'll take us to the recommendations, and there are several there, and I know Phil has covered the majority of these off in his introduction, but I think the gravity of this requires me to run through these recommendations again, so everybody can be very clear. So the recommendations in 2 and 2.1 start with Cabinet recognise a net revenue forecast deficit of £10.37 million, with some 6.83 million of this directly associated with the extraordinary financial pressures attached to COVID-19. 2.2, that Cabinet continues to make strong representations to Welsh Government for full reimbursement of 6.83 million, leaving Council with a sum of £3.5 million to address as a true in-year pressure. 2.3, an in-year budget recovery plan to address the forecast overspend of 3.54 million is drawn up for Cabinet consideration in September. 2.4, that Cabinet notes the extent of movements in reserve usage contained in Appendix 1. 2.5, that Cabinet agrees that the 2019-20 year-end one-off surplus of £1.8 million be set against this year's forecast pressure of £3.54 million, leaving a residual sum of £1.74 million as a minimum to address by way of an in-year recovery plan. 2.6, in taking the approach set out in 2.5 above, Cabinet recognises the extraordinary nature of the current year and accepts that a further sum of £1.8 million will need to be found as part of the budget setting process for financial years 2021-22. 2.7, that Cabinet considers the forecast capital outturn spend of 52.118 million introducing 134,000 underspend and the presumptions made around net financing consequences as outlined in Appendix 1. And finally, 2.8, that Cabinet recognises that these numbers will have to be reconsidered in the event that Welsh Government falls short of expectation in compensating the Council, or pressures such as pay award settlements are agreed at levels beyond our planning assumptions. Okay, those are the recommendations. I'll take those, we'll vote on those en bloc. Okay, so can you submit your votes now, please? Great, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks again, Phil. Thanks to everybody, officers, for all the work you've done. I look forward to receiving, well, not looking forward to it, but we will receive, further report in September for us to consider. Okay, I'm going to move us into the next item, and this is the Digital Infrastructure Action Plan update. Sarah Jones.
Thanks, Leader. So the purpose of the report that I'm presenting to you today is to provide you with an update on the significant activity that's taken place since we adopted the Digital Infrastructure Plan. And it's all around that overarching ambition that we've got as a council, which is to try and reduce the digital deficiencies that take place, or exist rather, within our communities. There's also a recommendation in this report in terms of the Superfast Cymru programme, so I'll go into a little bit more detail on that further in my report. But we're asking Cabinet today to endorse our approach to continue to work with Welsh Government to make sure that we optimise the investment that's coming forward as part of the Superfast Cymru 2 programme. So members are aware that we approved our digital infrastructure plan last September, and since then I think it's apparent that that robust infrastructure that we need in our county has been more pronounced than ever before, predominantly due to COVID and the impact that that's had on our communities. I don't think I need to convince anyone on this call today, but quite clearly the digital agenda is hugely important. It has been over the last few months and it's going to be going forward. I know all of us individually have increased our use of digital platforms, and we've all got different experiences on how that's gone, some positive and many otherwise. But clearly broadband connection and the importance of decent digital infrastructure is going to be really important to all of us, not just as councillors, but obviously to all of our communities. I've had lots of meetings over the last few months, and the issue of digital connectivity and digital platforms has often come up, even in meetings that are not related in any way to that agenda. For example, I had a really good meeting a couple of months ago with one of our wellbeing coordinators, and I asked him, what's one of the key challenges you see for the people that you're working with over the coming months? And he said it's around enabling them digitally. So whilst they're unable to meet physically in person, we need to work with them to enable them to use that digital infrastructure to help them connect and feel connected during the current challenging time. So we clearly have challenges, and that's the whole purpose of the Digital Infrastructure Action Plan. I'm really pleased that we were ahead of the curve and we had a lot of this groundwork in place. As I say, coming to the fore now with the COVID pandemic, it's quite clear that we needed to have that in place prior to now, and I'm really pleased with some of the work that's taken place. But we do still have that digital deprivation challenge, that divide exists. So we're still at 12.5% in terms of the digital deprivation rate, and that puts us at one of the lowest, or rather the highest rates in terms of the other counties within the CCR area. We've identified that we've got 8,000 properties within the county that are currently challenged by poor broadband and poor broadband connectivity. And in terms of how we're looking to address those 8,000 premises, we've got 5,600 that we're going to be looking to work with in terms of altnets. So altnets are your alternative providers, so not just BT, for example. The second option that we're looking at, and I mentioned this in terms of the second recommendation, it's around working with the Superfast Cymru programme. So the Welsh Government has just announced to us that they're going to increase their FTTP, that's the fibre to the premises side of the project, from 1,581 premises in Monmouthshire to 2,163. Now, that is good news, but we need to work very closely with them to make sure that that's going to go into the right areas and it's not going to be at the detriment of some of our long-term plans with altnets and other providers as well. And then the third area that's going to be key to addressing those 8,000 premises that are currently receiving poor broadband is going to be around the £10 million local broadband fund. Now, there's a consultation on that at the moment, and we're looking very closely at what sort of bids we're going to put into that that, and I know Mike and Kath are working hard on that as we speak. So I won't take you through the sections 3.6 or 3.7 of the report. Those are specifically around the planned activity and the progress against the recommendations in the previous report. I've covered some of that off already. But before I sum up and finalise my comments in relation to this, I just wanted to pick up a couple of areas. There are areas that aren't often covered in the covering report, but are absolutely vital to the success of digital and bridging the digital divide in our communities. The first is around broadband take-up and exploitation of broadband digital infrastructure. So it's just to reassure Cabinet that we continue to partner with the Superfast Broadband Exploitation Advisory Group, and we're continuously looking for opportunities to promote broadband opportunities to local businesses to make sure they improve their online skills and take up the offer where it does exist. And we're also looking at other opportunities for digital exploitation within our community through the RDP programme. So one of the actions there is to recruit a digital officer seeking funding through the RDP programme, and that person will work directly with our communities to encourage them to take up the offer in terms of the rollout of broadband and superfast broadband. And then the final point I just wanted to make, because it's absolutely key, and I referenced it a bit earlier in terms of the wellbeing agenda, it's around digital literacy. So it's all well and good us having the infrastructure in place when it comes in, but we need to make sure that we have communities that are skilled and able to take advantage of the opportunities there. So through working with organisations like Digital Communities Wales, we'll train up volunteers and work with them and our residents to support their needs in terms of digital skills and digital literacy. So summing up, Leader, obviously, as I say, COVID, we had to get this right, and I think I'm really pleased about the work that was happening anyway. We've already identified that broadband and the digital divide existed within our communities, and COVID has really brought that to the fore and shown to us that we need to make sure we continue to invest and support those that are impacted by poor digital connectivity. It's always been a priority for me as a councillor. One of my first motions to council back in 2012, 2013 was on broadband and broadband access with Councillor Debbie Breakborough. And I know as an administration that we're all fully behind this agenda. So I'm pleased to see us ahead of the curve. There's more to do, but I want to thank particularly Kath Fallon and Mike Powell, because they are definitely doing us a great job on this whole agenda. And I'm pleased with the progress we've made against the action plan.
Thank you, Sarah. That's a great message to hear, and I acknowledge the great work that you've been putting in, and obviously Kath and Mike, been a brilliant effort. But you're quite right. You've been passionate about this ever since I've known you, and that's why I wanted you to champion it, because I know you're going to get things done. Are getting things done. So a big thanks, and it is absolutely fundamental to a county like ours, and I think the pandemic has demonstrated how crucial good connectivity is, not just for individuals' way of life, but the businesses as well. And it is fundamental that we narrow that gap, and it's great to see that gap is narrowing, and let's get it closed as soon as possible. So yeah, big thanks. Okay, colleagues, anybody wish to put anything in the or comment on the report? No? Okay, well, thanks again, Sarah. I'll just take us through those recommendations quickly. So the recommendation in 2.1 is a Cabinet to receive the update and acknowledge the significant activity and progress that has been made in less than a year, and to support the future plans for the deployment of broadband infrastructure across the county to reduce the deficiencies in digital infrastructure that are seen across the county. 2.2 then, that following the very recent announcement by Welsh Government on additional funding for Openreach via the Superfast programme, Cabinet is to approve officers' engagement in further dialogue with Welsh Government to optimise the additional investment in order to maximise the spread of connectivity across the county, and alongside other digital infrastructure investment as outlined in the report. Okay, all in favour of that, if you could submit your votes. Lovely, thank you very much, and that's carried unanimously. Right, thank you once again, Sarah, and thanks for Kath and Mike if they're looking in as well. Okay, I'll move it. Well, it's back to you, Sarah, now for the next report. And I'm never sure how we say this. Coco Ray, 5G testbed. Over to you. I think you're mute, Sarah.
Thanks, sorry, Leader. Yeah, it's COCORE, so it's Connect Communities in the Rural Economy. And we've had a few reports on this issue over the last 6 months, so I'm going to keep my my reports pretty brief today. Today is the focus about getting approval from you as Cabinet to go forward on this project as a partner. So what we're agreeing is that Welsh Government will be the lead authority, lead body, taking that role on this project, but we're going to be a key partner as part of that whole process. The plan I've just presented to you in terms of the update gave us approval as a council. It's given us that mandate to look at opportunities around 5G, quite rightly, I think, because we need to be looking for every single opportunity we can, as we say, to close that digital divide. We then had a paper back in February, you'll remember, which brought COCORE to the table, outlining the project today, which we gained approval for, but in terms we're seeking about how we take it forward. So as I say, we're bringing it forward to provide an update, but to give that clarification since that report in February. And it's, as I say, outlining the fact that Welsh Government will be the lead body responsible, and we will be a key partner, and that key partner will be in the form of providing match funding in terms of officer time. This project presents a really fantastic opportunity for us to gain a stake in that future direction of the 5G offer in Wales, and it's an ability to shape the rural testbed activities. As a council, through this project, we also had the opportunity to secure 5G bandwidth, which could then be used to support business and also public service delivery. I just want to pick up on a couple of areas of focus, and you'll notice that in the cover report. We're looking specifically in terms of that rural activity in terms of tourism, and there's a specific reference there to some activity around Raglan Castle. And also, I'm really pleased to see around the diverse rural economy, so with a particular focus on farm security and also mental well-being for our farming community, which is something, again, I'm really keen to see and see how we can use digital and technology to help address some of those challenges we face there. As I say, the previous paper on the Digital Infrastructure Action Plan gave a clear outline of the challenges we face and the demonstration of us as a council and the commitment we've made to tackling those. We can't sit back and do nothing. Then we can't wait for others to fill a gap, because otherwise we wouldn't be having this problem in the first place. So we're here now working closely with partners, with others, seeking out those opportunities. And I really welcome the approach we've taken. Again, it's showing that innovative approach. It's not trying to seek to work with just one provider. It's looking at all those different multidisciplined approaches to addressing digital deprivation. So again, thank you to Kath and the team for all the work that they put in this, because they've been actively seeking out those solutions. And I think that's all credit to them that this is coming forward today. So thank you, Leader. That's my my brief update on this.
Yeah, thanks again. Another exciting component of our digital journey, and I'm really excited about 5G and what it can unlock. And I'm really pleased we're at a testbed area for it, together with our partners in Blaenau Gwent and Wales Government leading. So I'm pleased to be part of this. It's exciting, and you know, often people think that 5G and Internet of Things are stuff which will only really affect towns and cities and urban areas, but no, it can really play a part in our rural society as well, and it could unlock huge opportunities in many areas, and specifically, as you said, around the agriculture and tourism side. So colleagues, I know I'm sure that I've got Paul Jordan would like to come in.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Thank you, Sarah. Given the recent government announcements with regard to Huawei and its access to the network, what impact will this have on the viability of the project? That's the first question. And in paragraph 7.1 of the report, we see that the resource implication for the authority is 242,000, and this will be in the form of in-kind match funding. If we're not taking on new employees, from which area of the authority will those employees be taken from?
Okay, thanks, Paul. So a couple of good questions there. Sarah, do you want to? Well, I'll leave you decide who you want to bring in to help you answer those.
Yeah, I'll just briefly answer, because very valid questions. Thank you, Paul. I mean, just to briefly say, as I say, we're coming into this in a partnership now. It's a very wide partnership with a lot of other bodies, including obviously Welsh Government, but also Cardiff University, Bristol University and others. So we've all got a role to play. But in terms of that around providers, there are going to be alternatives in terms of who we can work with on this. And then in terms of, I know the resourcing question around staff, we'll look to cover that from existing staff members. There's, I think, 3 or 4 that we'll be working with who will have a role on this project. But also I mentioned earlier about the RDP funded post. Again, that digital post will hopefully play a role in terms of picking up some of the capacity around this specific piece of work. But if it's okay, Leader, I bring Kath in, if Kath's here, to just cover that in a bit more detail.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Yes, welcome, Kath, if you can come in, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you very much, Sarah, for your delivery of the report, which is great, and also the digital report as well, and your passion that you displayed with that, so thank you. Yeah, I mean, there are obviously quite a few mobile network operators in the market who'll be providing service and equipment for the project. Clearly, it will need to be consistent with UK government guidelines. In terms of Huawei specifically, all equipment will have to, there'll be no more Huawei equipment purchased after December of this year, and any equipment will need to be removed by 2027, so any existing equipment. So as this will be a new connectivity project, I don't foresee this as being a major issue. I think it's a risk for us if we can go ahead in terms of the mobile connectivity issues we do have within the county. I appreciate you asking a question about resource. Clearly, that Mike and myself are already very much involved, and also Edwards from a tourism perspective in terms of the input with Raglan Castle and also with sort of Cadw. But as I say, there's quite a few partnerships. It won't just be us. It's very much us working with others. So we don't anticipate it being a problem. It'll be something that we're actually really excited to be involved with, and can see huge potential for the county in terms of the forward delivery for 5G and how that will connect with our sort of new digital infrastructure that's actually going to be going in as well. So a real added value for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Kath. That was really helpful. I hope, Paul, that's satisfied your questions. If you want to come back, you're welcome.
Yeah, it's fine at the moment. Thanks, Leader.
Okay, well, thanks, Sarah. And nobody else has indicated to speak on this. Really excited about this and looking forward to receiving updates in the future. So let's take it. The recommendation then is into 1, and it is to request approval to proceed with the CoCore 5G testbed Pathfinder project as a partner with Welsh Government as lead body. All in favour of that, please vote now. One more to vote. It's unanimous anyway, but somebody's struggling, I think, there. Okay, so I'm going to, so that's carried. Thank you again, Sarah, Kath. I'll take us to the last report today, and this is the Welsh Church Fund Working Group and the recommendations that they put forward to us. So the purpose of this report is to make recommendations to Cabinet on the schedule of applications for the Welsh Church Fund Working Group meeting held on the 30th of June, just gone. And you'll see that there are a pile of recommendations listed there in 2.1. Some of those you'll note that the recommendation is for deferral for further information. The list, the schedule there, I don't intend to take them individually. We thank that committee for its continuous work, and we wish those projects well. Are there any questions anybody would like to ask of the report or any of the components? No? Okay then, so I'm going to take us to the recommendation, and we'll take all of those recommendations on block in 2.1. So we resolved that the following grants be awarded as per the schedule of applications, and they're listed below. So if you can vote now, please, that would be good. So yes, of course, we've got an abstention and 4, 6. There is one other vote hasn't been cast. Somebody might be having problems. Always vote again if you need to, because it only records one, however many times you do it, but it's unanimous anyway. Okay, so that brings that to the end. So that brings us to the end of the agenda today. Colleague, can I thank you for your continued work, and officers for all you continue to do. We are moving into a couple of weeks a little bit quieter for some of us anyway, where we'll perhaps try to catch up on a bit of rest, ready for the journey ahead, which you know from earlier reports is going to be a bumpy ride. So can I wish any of you who are having a break this summer to have a good one. And with that, I will draw the meeting to a close. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.